Okay, so if you look on your agenda, we're on number 10, and 10B is request for proposals for airport management services. And if you'll flip to that part in your packet, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Council, tonight there, as was mentioned under item 10B, we'll be discussing a recommendation to proceed with procuring requests for proposals for airport management services. The background is pretty much outlined in the document. I'll sum it up by saying that, basically what we're proceeding here with tonight is a discussion and a decision to move forward looking at specifically outsourcing duties and responsibilities related to management of the airport. Now, we've had some discussions about what that would look like in terms of the organization that we would wind up looking at potentially contracting with in the future. And without getting too into the specifics, but essentially everything that we had our former airport manager, Tony Bunch, doing, we would be looking at this group or a group to actually provide those airport management services. This is an outsourcing of those duties and responsibilities, as I mentioned before. The idea is that we recognize that these are things that need to happen in terms of managing our airport, and we look at this as an opportunity for perhaps enhancing the way we provide those types of services. It was mentioned earlier that the Airport Commission looked at this same proposal that we presented last Monday, unanimous recommendation to move forward with the next step in the process, which is to take this concept and to develop requests for proposals, as I said earlier. Once we would come up with that RFP, then we would come back to the Airport Commission, go through the same process in terms of getting a recommendation from the Airport Commission back to the Council before we would actually proceed with the RFP process. Then if we move through that process, we would be looking at an eventual award of a contract for these types of services. Again, without getting too much into details, there's some attachments that I think explain some of the benefits of this type of an idea. I think it's worthy of at least proceeding ahead with the concept, because I think there's a lot of energy behind this proposal as it's written at this point in time. There's a lot of interest in developing a sort of a board director type of a relationship where you would, I think in that sort of scenario, the city would be able to really capitalize on the expertise and the energy of that type of a directing a full-time person in doing the kind of things that we need to do to really develop the airport as an economic development tool for the future. We've had a lot of things that have happened out at the airport that are positive, and I think this is an opportunity to look at some of the challenges as we face in the future to be able to, where there are many, the work is lighter, and I think this has that type of potential in terms of bringing collective interests and efforts towards really developing and creating an atmosphere for the airport that can be really positive. There's a suggested motion. The options are outlined. The financial and resource considerations, I think, as pointed out, we have in the past had interim airport managers, part-time, full-time. We've always allocated dollars in our budget for these types of services. And we would be looking, obviously, at those kinds of financial considerations going forward to be able to apply to some sort of a contract related to this. But that's where we need to sit down and sort of look at a sustainable future for this in terms of financially, and in terms of looking at it under this kind of a situation, how we would go ahead and meet all of our debt obligations as well as other operational costs, and so we would obviously, once we develop the RFP, we would bring those back to the council with those, or to the Airport Commission, then the council with those financial considerations at that time. But just to give you a general idea, again, we've financially supported these in the past to certain degrees, and have recognized long-term, over a long term, that full-time responsibilities is something that really is needed here, and I think we can really benefit from this. Again, financially, we've also have always maintained our airport budget as a standalone. There are no resources other than what we obtain in terms of financially through aviation and non-aviation leases and charges, and we also collect other various services or fee-for-services that are out there. As you know, we have an FBO who also provides us some lease income as a part of this, part of our airport operation, and those are all the financial considerations that we would be looking at coming up with a proposal to come back to the council at some future date. So with that, Sheila has helped me put together this proposal, or has really, in her stead as the interim airport manager, has been fielding a lot of the calls and helping putting this information together. I know there's a few folks out here who would like to talk to you about it some more, so I'm sure you'd like to hear from them, but if you have any questions, I can take those at this time.
Have we had any preliminary discussions with FAA in terms of just the concept feedback?
No, not specifically on this, but again, the idea of outsourcing airport management services is not a new one. There are companies out there that do this on a for-profit basis. So my sense is, this concept is not something that would be any FAA issue with. And in terms of the city's relationship under this whole scenario, obviously, as I said before, we'd have to go through an RFP process. People could respond to that RFP. It doesn't have to be, just nonprofit, but a for-profit company. But I think at the end of the day, I think this proposal that we're looking at in terms of the non-profit airport management, I think, has a lot of credibility or a lot of opportunity, just because there are limited resources, and the for-profit airport management companies tend to be at the bigger operations. But again, the idea of outsourcing this is not a new one, and we believe we could get FAA approval, but that is part of the process that we'll be going through going forward. When we develop the RFP, we'll run that by FAA.
And is this, this is an RFP, so other people will have the opportunity to apply also, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Have you looked at other airports that have used this model? And I'm talking about the nonprofit model that was put in our packet. Have you looked at those? If you have, what did you find out?
The one that comes closest is not exactly the same model, but the one that I think that comes closest in Oregon that we're aware of that has worked is in the Dalles. But it's a little different scenario. It's not necessarily a nonprofit, but it was a group of airport users, to my understanding, that basically got together and provided this type of airport management services. And that was also, I believe, was more of a county city airport, so it was a little bit, again, different than our scenario. But I think the same idea is true, that actually it was very similar in that you had a local group that banded together and said, hey, we'd like to do this for the airport at the Dalles. So similar, but not exactly. And successful, to my knowledge. We had some comments from the city manager up there, I understand, and some others that provided some positive feedback.